Machi, Keshie Corine Pearce, Teketil Anan. My name is Corine Pearce and I'm from Redwood Valley, California, and today I'm at the Grace Hudson Wild Garden and we were talking about dogwood and willow in use for basketry. So I'm just going to do a quick video for everybody that wasn't able to come or everybody that did come and wants to get a refresher. So I'm actually standing in these beautiful red sticks, and this is creek dogwood. This grows here at the garden. It was transplanted here, and this is one of the basket materials that we use in weaving pomo baskets. This is used for work baskets like fish traps or quail traps, burden baskets, and cradles. Now is the time to harvest it. So it has this beautiful red skin that comes when the plant is dormant. Really want to wait until the coldest part of the year. So either January or February. Don't just wait until the leaves fall off. If the leaves are off, but you haven't had any real cold snaps, the skin will still pop off. So you want to make sure that you wait until it's very cold. Another really cool thing about dogwood is that it can be medicinal. You can use the bark for tea, and traditionally the red bark was actually smoked in pipes. So I've never done that. I wouldn't. I'm a little nervous because it is possible to have an allergy to dogwood. So be very careful. My cat and my daughter are both allergic to it. So just be really careful when you're working. It can make you sneeze. It can give you hives. It can make you itchy. So just be really careful when you're doing that. Make sure you're not allergic to it. And when you harvest it, you want to cut it as far down to the ground as you can, so that it encourages these new beautiful shoots. Like all these beautiful bright red shoots are just from this last year. And once the leaves start to come out, then it's not any good for basketry anymore. It's really itchy, and also the color flakes off like fingernail polish if you don't harvest it at the right time. So I harvested some of these. It's also very easy to propagate. So for example, I would bend this stick over. It's already starting to bend over. But if you stake it into the ground, where you stake it is going to make new roots. And you can see right here, if you want to come in close. So here are some that we pushed down before. And you can see all these little knobs, these little nodules. Those are actually new roots starting. So I would leave that down there. And then you can see where I cut it last year. I'd go ahead and cut it there again. And when you cut, you always want to cut at an angle. It doesn't matter what angle it is, as long as it's not flat, because you don't want the water to settle on it, because then it will rot. So you want to make sure that you cut it at an angle for the protection of the plant. So you can see how beautiful these are, so nice and red. So you can tell, you can see that the dogwood that I was harvesting is really beautiful and straight because it's been taken care of. So I've been harvesting here for a few years and taking care of it, but this is what it looks like in the wild. So it's not as red, and it's also got a lot of little tiny spokes coming off of it. Sometimes it can be green, it's not getting enough water, but here it's really beautiful. So it is really important to maintain and cultivate your own dogwood and your own willow, because it doesn't just grow like that naturally, obviously. So these sticks, if I were to take over this plant, I would need to amend the soil. So I would bring ashes or bone or hair or something like that to give it nutrients, which helps with its color, and it also helps keep the plant healthy. And I would cut it all the way down if I want new shoots. And I would also, like I said, you can bend it over and stake it in, and then it makes a new bush. So if you keep coming back to a plant over and over again and all you do is cut it down, eventually it will stop coming back. So you always want to propagate it, and you want to encourage it for new growth. And this is really important. This is actually in the Ukiah Valley. I I would say dogwood was used just as much as willow. Not as much everywhere else, but definitely in the Ukiah Valley we used a lot more dogwood. So propagation is very, very important, especially this kind. There's more than one kind of dogwood, and the creek dogwood is much more red than, let's say, a mountain dogwood, which is more maroon or burgundy color. So it's important for the plant, for the birds. It makes berries, which our plants didn't have any on them right now, but normally there's berries. It also makes flowers, so it's bee food and bird food, which is very important. And it's also insect food. So a lot of insects like to hang out on the dogwood. It enriches the soil with its litter, so it's a really, really good plant to have, and it's very, very easy to cultivate in your regular garden. It looks beautiful. In the springtime, the very first thing that comes out on this plant is its white flowers. So it's a totally naked tree with beautiful red sticks and then these gorgeous white buttery flowers, and then the leaves come out after that. But it's a really important for California basketry, really important in the Ukiah Valley, and all of California, but really the creek dogwood's my favorite. This is the fresh dogwood that was harvested today by the attendants. I'm going to set it down in the sun so you can really appreciate its color. So it's almost neon. It is so bright. It's only this color when the plant is dormant. During the summer and during the springtime, it actually changes to be this more brownish, even green in color sticks. So if you harvest this when the leaves are on, the leaves have a little, they're fibrous, they have fibers in them, and those little fibers dry and they can cause severe itching and allergic reactions. So don't process it when it has leaves on it. Wait until it's naked like this. You want it, if you do it at the right time of the winter, when it's very, very cold, this color stays permanent. If you do it at any other time, the color will actually pop off like old fingernail polish. So you have to make sure that you do it when it's dormant. If you aren't a big fan of the color that you have, I'll just do this one on the bottom. A lot of traditional baskets were actually peeled dogwood. So the skin comes off. It's not quite as thick as the bark of a willow. So, but it's a little, it seems tricky because it looks like it's going to be really green because the bark is so thin, but it dries the same color as willow. So it still has that beige white color eventually. Yeah, so you just peel that off. This is the best dogwood because deers love dogwood. So they will come along and you think you have this great plant and it's going to make all these long shoots, and then the deers come and bite the tip, and then that stunts their growth, or they divide into a fork. I think I had one that was forked. So a deer will come along and bite the tip, and then now you have a short one with two tiny spokes at the top. Whereas I can get a ton more willow than I can dogwood, so I tend to peel the willow instead of peel the dogwood. But traditionally, and especially for cradle baskets, you make the cradle when the baby's born. So since there's not a season for babies, sometimes all you have to work with is dogwood in its wrong season. So if you don't have access to willow, you only have, let's say, a big dogwood tree, and it's summertime, you're going to peel them because the color would just come off anyway. Lots of different kinds of willow in California, and this kind that we have here in the basket garden is, some people call it white, I call it gray willow, and these are the little shoots, so I try to keep them very low. I'll actually come and I'll cut them all the way to the ground. And you really want to maintain them. Willow grows really, really well, grows really, really fast. and it really likes to be cut back a lot every single year. You use willow in a few different kinds of basketry. Most California baskets are based in willow. So either their middle is made out of willow or their spokes are willow. Most cradles are made out of willow. There's lots of different kinds. This is the white one. There's also green. There's gray. There's golden willow, which is not native. But anything like this, so I try to keep this really clear. That is untended, so that's what it looks like in the wild if you don't keep it straight. And then it gets much longer and skinnier if you keep tending it. So little branches like this, thinner ones, will be used for work baskets. Very thin ones will be peeled and they can go into foil baskets or very fine twine baskets. These thicker stalks like this will be turned into cradles or be turned into hoops on work baskets. So it has a lot of use. It's one of the best rooting hormone plants. So you can cut it up into little chunks and soak it in water and use that as rooting hormone. You can harvest willow any time of the year, really. It depends on what you want to use it for. So if it's for a cradle basket, a full size or a doll size, you can go any time of year. Even in the full heat of summer when it has leaves on it and everything, it's totally fine. If you want to harvest willow for twine baskets or coil baskets, you do it when the plant is dormant. So that means in the winter, after all the leaves have fallen off and the little leaf buds have shrunk. So those little leaf buds, they do get smaller during the winter. You want to get to them before they bud again in the spring. So it would be any time that it's dormant, and whatever your climate is, you just have to pay attention to when the plant is asleep. And those are the best. My very favorite time to harvest them is usually around February, March, April, because they don't have the new leaf buds yet, but they've actually grown a little bit in length, and the water content is also very high, so the skin peels off really easily. In the month of April, I harvest a ton and it all gets peeled because it's so easy to do. So in our class today, we were able to harvest some willow, So I have some willow that's already been sorted, and it needs to dry for 8 months to a year before we use it. So these are all waiting to be used. Now they've all been dried, and then I have some sorted and tied dogwood. I have some dogwood yews for a cradle. I have some willow yews for a cradle. And then I have some cradles. So this is a full-size cradle, and it's willow. So peeled willow and unpeeled willow. And then this is dogwood. This is the dogwood in a basket, and it's just unpeeled dogwood and peeled willow. And then I have some work baskets. This is a seaweed basket, and this is made out of unpeeled gray willow. This basket's about 6 years old, so it lasts really well. This one was made out of cured willow, so it's very tight. You cure it, then you soak it, and then you weave with it, and that makes it really tight. You can also weave with fresh willow or fresh dogwood, which is what this was, but it makes it much looser. So you lose water weight, and then you lose that tightness. But when they're for hunting baskets or short-term baskets, it's fine. You don't need them to last forever. They can be, sometimes willow doesn't want to be peeled. Sometimes it does, we can see. There are better seasons for peeling. So sometimes you go out like last month and it's dormant and the skin is very tightly attached and it makes it more difficult. This one's not so bad. So the skin comes off. Let's see. So there are easier times, like I said, easier months. It's always easier to peel them around the full moon, which I am so grateful for. In case you miss it one month, you can go the next month. So sometimes it peels off, but usually you have to just use a knife. And to see, even so, there's 3 levels of peeling. There's peeling when it's so ready and so perfect that it peels off like banana skin. And then there's peeling with a knife. This one's pretty easy going. And then there's also a time when the skin's not going to come off no matter what you do. And even scraping it is like, it's like chewing it. And at those times, I don't peel. I simply cure all that material with its bark on. And then I use it later. And when the skin comes off like a banana, I peel everything, whether I have a plan for it or not, because I know eventually I will use it. So I go all the way down, and it has little nubs. It still has these little nubs that will turn into leaves or possibly turn into branches if we were to let this go all spring. So what I do is I'll peel down the whole length, and then I turn it around and make sure that all those little nubs are gone, and make sure that it's very, very smooth. And then I'll bind them up. I'll bind them all straight and let them dry for a year. These are really nice. These are very beautiful. So this particular kind that I'm peeling right now are most suited for a very fine, so it would be the coiling material inside these baskets. It would also be the twining material for a basket like this, or the inside spokes of a very fine work basket. The gray willow, when it's this thin, is not super strong. When when the green willow is this thin, it's not very strong, but this willow will be strong all the way down to the tip. So this is the best willow for those very fine baskets where you need everything uniform in size. There's a really wonderful book by Julia Parker where she taught, it's actually called Scrape the Willow Until It Sings. And as a basket weaver, that's what we do a lot. I would say 10% of the time is weaving, and the other 90% of the time is peeling and prepping. So it takes a lot of work. In the past, you would just scrape, and they would use obsidian knives. I still have my grandmother's, which is really cool. You would really taper this, so it's almost like whittling, and you would make this the same or very uniform thickness all the way down, which takes a long time. You need to dry the willow for weaving, especially coil baskets or twine baskets, for about a year. Any younger than that and it's really not cured, it's just dry. So these are just dry. This is from this year, and you can really see, let me grab that little one that started. Okay, I'm going to talk about the difference in color. So if you couldn't see this, and I don't know if you can, it has kind of a green tinge to it. It's still not 100% dry. So it has this green hue, and the same with this one. They both kind of look green, and these are from this year. So, well, I say this year, but these are from 2020. And then by comparison, these sticks look beige. So they've lost all of that green, and they look like you would think a dried stick should look. So they either look white, which is what these look like, or they start to get a little buff. And these sticks are actually probably 5 years old. and they would be perfect for weaving. And then you can tell, so the older they get, the more cured they get, the better they get for weaving. They actually get darker. To weave a twine basket or a coil basket, you want to wait at least a year. So an entire year for them to dry. I've inherited willow that was probably 15 years old, 20 years old. And if they're kept somewhere dry where they never get moist, if they're kept out of the sun, if the temperature doesn't fluctuate too much, if the moisture doesn't fluctuate too much, they're still totally fine. And I've even heard of people using even older materials to weave with and they're still fine. So you can see, if I can compare these. So this basket's about 25 years old or so. This one's probably 20. But in comparison, if I hold up these sticks, these new sticks, you can definitely see the difference in color. So you don't want to weave with anything that's green. And the reason you don't weave with anything that's green is it's just, it's not flexible for some reason. Even if you soak it, it still will crack. Every time you try to twist it, it will crack. And the longer you wait, it just mellows out and it gets so much easier to weave. Everybody has a different opinion or belief about curing. I never let my stuff get hot. So I don't peel it and then put it like next to the water heater or anything, because I don't want it to, if it dries too fast, it can still be weak. So I let it dry slowly. But most basket weavers all over California, if you listen to them talk, they all say a year. You have to wait a year. So plan ahead. So that's one of the reasons why baskets cost so much money. They take so much work. You can't go, I love to quote Sherry, because she always said that her grandmother said, you can't go to the store and buy this material, but you also can't just go outside and find this material. It takes years of taking care of those plants and asking the plants to provide for you and offering them gifts to keep their soil healthy. So it's a lot of work. It's totally worth it. Just plan ahead. You have to always plan ahead with your baskets and with your materials. I guess my final notes would be just go out and harvest some. Even if you don't want to make a basket, it's really good to get to know the plants in your area and how to take care of them. And also to share that location with people who do want to weave or who do want to tend, so that the environment can really kind of find its balance again. I think that's mostly all I have to say.